Hello, and welcome to Capacity Overload, AI for Social Work, a new podcast aimed at having real conversations about how the right technology can help serve the organizations that are serving our communities. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Paget. My co-host, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Hey everyone, I'm Oliver Belanger. Very excited for us to be having this conversation.
And our first guest, our very first, quite honorable guest, Mary Morris. Tell us all about yourself and what your organization does and where you're located.
Hi, I'm Marie Morse. I'm located in Lafayette, Tippecanoe County, and I am the executive director for Homestead Resources. We are both a HUD housing counseling agency, so we help people understand how to get into a mortgage, what a loan means, what tenant rights and responsibilities are. We do budgeting and credit counseling. We are also a community development financial institution, so we offer small dollar loans to help people stay away from predatory lenders and build up their credit scores. And then we also develop a little bit. So in Lafayette, we have developed two senior housing projects. One has 50 units of affordable senior housing, and the other one has 74 units of affordable senior housing. So our main goal is to keep families in their homes, whatever we can do to make that happen.
That's awesome. And full disclosure, Oliver and I both work for Citizen AI, a vertical AI company that we first met you to talk about how that application might help some of your population. And I think the first thing you told us was that you were yet to have opened ChatGPT. Was that correct?
That's correct. In fact, when you offered me to be on this, I thought, oh, great, I get to be the first person on to talk about how little I know about what you're talking about. So I'm pretty excited to learn along with everybody else. And I've been, since our first discussion, kind of looking at the possibilities and what could be done. And, as a not-for-profit, every not-for-profit right now is struggling with, how to keep helping people with limited finances that we are getting. And I'm thinking, well, maybe this can help us with efficiency, and let's talk about how that could work. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oliver, do you want to share a little bit about what Citizen AI provides here in this initial show so that we can have a little scope of work
Yeah,
context?
absolutely. So we are a vertical AI company, and what that means is we are an AI company, AI tool that is specifically designed to solve one problem. And the big problem that we help and we solve for is resource navigation, oftentimes as a wraparound service. So we have a AI tool that can talk to clients, understand their needs, uses motivational interviewing to take that need and help them move through the stages of change towards identifying resources in their local community that can help them move forward as they try to make a pivotal transition in their life to a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. And last time we talked to you, you mentioned that there was a lot of federal funding that had been pulled, federal and state funding, and you have 1,500 clients that are trying to stay
Normally,
in their homes. So
Mhm.
for people who don't work in the nonprofit space, the ones in the nonprofit space probably have a very good idea of how difficult it has been with the budget cuts. But
Yes.
kind of paint the picture of what does life look like today trying to serve your clients versus what it looked like, just a year or two ago.
Well, just a year or two ago, we did have some nice contracts from the federal government that went through the state, and then the state distributed them throughout the state of Indiana. And we were lucky enough to get a couple of them. One was that it helped us actually pay people's mortgages that had gotten behind, and that way we kept them in their homes. The second one helped tenants stay in their homes. And one of the issues now with the housing crisis is that if you can't stay in the home you have because you can't afford that rent, you can't afford the outside rent. You could go from being a homeowner for 10 years and suddenly be without any housing at all. And, that's not right. And we were paid, our staff was paid to help people access those funds, to give them the education they needed to not need those funds all the time, to help them budget and understand what resources were available and, how to make hard cuts if they needed to, if their income had gone down. Or, a lot of it is if their overtime went away. A lot of people, that's supposedly extra, but people live on that now when, the rents are so high. And we have so many families that are paying 50% of their income for housing, and that's unaffordable for a long time. So, we talk about crisis budgets. You're in a crisis right now, so you have to cut these things out. And then, regular budgets, maybe you can go out to dinner, but right now maybe you can't, and those are hard conversations we have. And we were paid to help people understand that. Um, and plus we had the money to help them stay in their homes. And uh, that money went away. The federal government is not funding it anymore. The rental money went away overnight. We weren't even given any warning on that. We had people in line that had done everything they were supposed to do, and suddenly there was no money to help them. And in each agency that I work with, I've been around for 40 years working with this agency. And so I know a lot of other not-for-profits, and everyone doesn't know from day to day if their program's going to be cut, what they're going to have to do, if they're going to have to lay off staff. Are they, the need is greater than it was, but yet the funding isn't there. And so we're all trying to work together to figure out how to make it through together, so that our families don't have to suffer any more than they already are. So that's, some of the issue that we have. It's hard to plan ahead because you don't know what's going to change tomorrow. And that's just life right now for a not-for-profit, and it's stressful on the staff. Um, and I'm fortunate that I'm not losing much staff, but some people, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. And so that's some of the things we need to talk about, on can AI help us do the same amount of work, maybe more work with less staff, or, some way that maybe our staff could actually breathe sometime during the day. That would be nice. And maybe have a lunch. Nobody ever has lunch in the not-profit world. And, just things like that. What can we do with, but on the other side, I don't have time to figure that out because I'm busy trying to save somebody's home. And so this was really interesting when we had the conversation. We also talked a lot about how does a family find help? It's complicated. Fortunately, here in Tippecanoe County, many of us have been around for a while. So if they call me and it's not my organization that can help them, I know who to send them to. But I'm still having to send them here and there and everywhere. And is there a way to use AI to make that easier for a family to find what they need? So all those things got my interest going. And I, uh, I listened to one of your broadcasts, didn't understand a word that you said, but I thought, okay, I need to learn this. We need to learn how to deal with this in this day and age. So that's sort of where we came from, and how as a not for profit it might really be helpful to us.
And I think since this is the first time, Oliver, I think what would be fun, and we can edit this if we need to, right? Is so a little bit of background. Oliver, why don't you tell what your technical background is, and then I will speak to mine, and then maybe we can just start to give some suggestions on how AI might be leveraged in order
Yeah.
to assist her.
Yeah. So my background is I am trained as a software engineer. I have a bachelor's degree in that or in computer science. But also at the time that I was finishing school, um, I realized that I didn't have quite enough of the practical side of things. So I actually made my way into technology through a workforce development program out in
Mhm.
California. So I've kind of gotten to see a little bit more of some of these different systems than others. And so my background is in building software as well as a variety of other functions within the startup ecosystem.
Can I say I love that? My background is in the hard knocks of life. I don't have a bachelor's degree. I have one college class I took once. And I think learning, like you realized that you needed to know more from the ground up, and that's really amazing. That is what I'm a huge fan of that.
Well, I'll tell you, at the time, employers were letting me know that I needed to know more from the ground up.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna have to say my screen is flickering. Am I frozen for you all?
No, not
No,
at all.
Okay. Well, and I will edit this out, but oh, there it just completely stopped. Am I gone?
No.
I'm on
Yeah.
and I can see nothing. That's okay. I don't have to see
Okay.
anything. All right. Sorry. I can totally identify with the high school diploma and
Mhm.
School of Hard Knocks. My background was restaurants and fine dining for decades, and then I'm a person in long-term recovery, so I had some issues with alcoholism early in life. And when I got into recovery a second time around, back in around 2018, the opioid money had kind of hit the system of care in Lafayette, Indiana, right where you are, and I was getting help there and decided I wanted to be a helper and entered behavioral health and absolutely fell in love with the fact that we now had in the Midwest kind of a lot of different pathways for people depending on what their religious beliefs are, what their ethical beliefs were. There were multiple pathways to recovery, and they were all a cause for celebration. So it kind of became part of that ecosystem. And then I was working at the Salvation Army as a development director in Lafayette in November of 2022 when ChatGPT hit. And it was a real eye opener for me. I was really strong in the humanities when I was in school and weak in math. And I just saw it as leveling the playing field and making it so that someone who was more attuned to language processing than they were to numbers processing could now do a lot more things if they use this technology the right way. And so ever since then, I have been what I would probably call a super user, but I don't write code and I don't understand it at that level. And yet I have found these tools very, very helpful in marketing and budgeting and explaining data to me and explaining spreadsheets to me. And I just find it's phenomenally helpful on a lot of fronts.
And I'm very anxious to learn that. We're lucky that we have Purdue University right here, and I'm very fortunate that I have several Purdue groups that offer to come in and volunteer, and it's so fun to watch their thinking process and their ideas, and things that I never would have thought of at all. And I feel like this will be the same way that, once I get into it, I think that I'm gonna like, how did I ever live without this? Like the microwave. You guys are too young. But I remember when there weren't microwaves, and I love to cook. So I'm like, why in the world would I want a microwave? But I can't live without one now. So I want A1 to do the same thing to me, that I won't be able to live without it. That would be great.
That's an amazing analogy. Oliver, do you want to dive in first? What thoughts do you have?
yeah. I mean, I think where my mind goes to is maybe it might be a good time to dig into and talk through some different opportunities for incorporating AI into the work that you do. And so when we think about applying AI and using kind of the technology that exists today to actually be useful in the workplace, the places where this tech tends to be quite useful is in places where people have to produce large volumes of text in things like potentially looking through applications. And again, you have situations where, for example, our tool, right, is very good at those client interactions in a very specific format. So when we're thinking about, you know, the different opportunities within what Homestead is doing to be able to build more bandwidth and build more capacity into the staff, one thing that might be a good thing to think through is uh, where are is there sources of work that, let's say, just require a lot of writing or require a lot of that kind of stuff?
I know that a lot of people now use it for grant applications.
One
Know with that?
moment. Yeah, give me 1 second. Jason's giving me a call.
Okay.
Hey, Jason. Uh, he's just having some minor technical difficulties. I'll be right back on. Uh,
Okay. Mhm.
so I think we were saying, opportunities for applying this technology um, to the work that you do, and so identifying these different areas within your workflows where perhaps there's a lot of writing that's created, things of that nature.
Okay. Um, I do know that grant writing is becoming a thing on
Hmm.
artificial intelligence. And, just because I am at level 1 on here, maybe negative, artificial intelligence, does that include things like ChatGPT? Is
Hmm.
that all of that together? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I wanna make sure, like, many of us just have no idea. And so,
From
I wanted to make sure some of those names I've heard, there's a couple other new names out that
hmm
apparently are new things. So mostly it's around writing. It'll help you, like, make your things sound better, and you still have to put information into it, and then it
hmm
will help you make that more professional or
hmm
whatever, and come up with ideas that maybe if you said this, it might get their attention. And
hmm
okay, that makes some sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, does it do anything on, does it research things for you? As say, you know, I need to find a funder, that might be interested in this. Would artificial
Yeah.
intelligence do that?
So it can, and so this is actually might be a good opportunity to talk about vertical versus non-vertical solutions.
Perfect.
So ChatGPT, Claude, all of these different what are known as foundational models. They're the people that produce the actual AI underlying technology. And then the rest of the world kind of builds applications on top of that. So
Okay.
looking at kind of the past, those foundational models are kind of like building the servers in a sense that everyone else is sending traffic to and using to build the application layer, which is more useful for specific use cases and situations. So ChatGPT, Claude, all of them are going to have a deep research functionality capability. Now, this allows you to do deep research pretty effectively. One of the great ways to use that function is to tell, go to a couple of these different models, tell them all the kind of query you're looking into, have them build a report and then feed all three of the reports into one of those more generic models to cross verify the claims. Because one of the risks with using AI in general is that it just makes stuff up. And
I was going to ask that. Yes.
it makes stuff up because it's a guessing machine. So it's constantly just guessing
Mm-hmm.
every step of the way. But when you do a few different independent researches, in parallel, and then you tell it to cross-verify the claims, then it basically is a higher likelihood of guessing right, because the things that don't corroborate each other then get removed. Um,
Okay.
so now those open tools are going to be really capable of doing a lot of different things,
Uh-huh.
but they're always going to require a person involved to look at the output and say, yeah, this looks right. No, this doesn't
Uh-huh.
look right, and kind of work with it. And so the thing, and there's some studies on this, the thing that's most effective with those kinds of models is this iterative approach of interacting with them and consistently kind of sitting there. And that means there's a bit of a training gap, where people need to kind of learn and get used to working with those tools. And so there is a bit of a learning curve there. It's not very um, hard, but it does take a little bit of time. And the
Uh-huh.
tools are such that they can kind of train you how to use them themselves, because you can just ask it, "Hey, what's the best way for me to use this?" And
Yeah.
so,
Uh-huh.
so that's one angle. And so that would be able to do deep research, things of that nature. Now, what they're just using the web. So they're basically doing a Google search and
Uh-huh.
adding a bunch of AI to kind of try to do that a little bit better. Vertical AI, these are going to be products that are really focused on one problem, one use case. And so they can't do everything that the more general chatbots can, but they can do the one thing they're designed to do much more easily,
Uh-huh.
and often requiring a lot less training that would be required if we were using one of the generic ones. So
Okay.
that means within that, if we're talking about specifically grants, there are several grant specific AI tools. One that comes to mind, and only just because it comes to mind, is called GrantExec. And they have a incorporated vendor grant finder. So they have a database of grants that they keep track of. And they have the ability to help you potentially write some grants. They have the ability to search through their database of funders and different grant writing options. All of this ecosystem value of helping you solve that problem. You could work with them and they'll be focused on that. At the
Uh-huh.
same time, you could also try to use those other tools for that use case. But
Uh-huh.
then what you would have to do is, through iteration, trial and error, figure out the right way to interact with that technology to produce that outcome. And so those vertical AI companies are basically taking the burden on figuring out how to apply the technology to that specific use case, workflow, or problem. They're kind of taking that off your hands.
Okay. Okay.
It's great recommendations. I'd like to throw a couple of them in there as well. So I have worked with some lay teams of people who just were ready to explore AI, but we didn't have the bandwidth to train a lot of them, and they were curious but didn't know the nuances. I think Google Notebook LM is probably one of the very best playgrounds. So that's free. You can connect it to your Google account. And essentially what you can do is just create folders in there and you can upload documents to that. So that could be your brand guide and your mission statement and all that. And then in natural language, you can have conversations and ask questions about the documents that are in there, but it will
Oh.
not hallucinate. So it uses what's called retrieval augmented generation. It is only taking the questions that you're asking and searching whatever sources you put in it for the answer. So if you have a bunch of things about Homestead in there and you say, what do zebras do on the plains of Africa? It will say, there's nothing in any of this information about zebras. Right.
Uh-huh.
So, and on the other side of that, you can generate an audio overview where it creates like a podcast type overview. You can generate a video overview. You can generate all kinds of different documents and sheets in there just by clicking on the button that says, create a presentation, and it'll create a PowerPoint presentation on everything that's in there. And so one of the things that I think is great, let's just say you're going to talk to a donor or you're going to talk to a big organization, a foundation, right? You could upload all the information you could possibly find about that foundation into a Google Notebook LM folder, hit audio overview. It'll take it about 15 minutes, but eventually you'll have a 15-minute podcast style overview of all that information. Now on your drive over to that foundation, you can listen to that podcast and you know so much more about that foundation when you walk in the door than you did before you got in your car, that you can have really intelligible conversations with them that will probably surprise them how much you know about them.
That is amazing. I wasn't aware of that, and I am sure many not-for-profits are not, and that would be exactly the kind of thing people would be willing, that would save them time and effort, because otherwise you're Googling away and trying to figure things out yourself, and that was Google Notebook?
Google Notebook LM.
LM,
So you
okay.
could take all of your policies and procedures and stick them in one of those and say, create a video overview for informing all volunteers, put your volunteer policy in there. And now you end up with a 15-minute video that you can show to your volunteers when they come in to help them onboard. That took
Oh,
you
that's
no money and
great.
no time.
Yeah.
It's not great video, but it's for training video. It's not marketing video, but it's great
Mhm, yeah,
training
yeah,
video.
yeah.
Mhm.
And we could use that for our board members too, when we have a new board member come on here, that would be really great. I think that, things like that is what could really help not-for-profits do more with less funding. And so, that's fabulous.
I
And
will
that's
warn
what
you.
we don't know. Those are the things we don't know. We we don't have time to research them.
I will warn you, if you upload Robert's Rules of Order and try to get a video, Google will say, this is too boring of material. I'm afraid I
It
cannot use
will, it will. That's why you have attorneys on your board. I don't
Now,
wanna know that.
Now, one thing with Google LM is Google Notebook is you do need to provide it the data, right?
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah,
going to be able to do all of those different things, but it's not going to go and do this deep research. So
right.
this is where each of these different kind of products and tools kind of have their function that they
Yeah.
serve, have their limitations, have their
Mhm,
considerations, and
mhm.
so a lot of the practice is figuring out the right things to kind of string together to achieve that the different goals and to take advantage of the different opportunities. And often it's not just to um, do the same thing but with fewer resources. Oftentimes it's being able to do
Yes,
more than
that
you were able to do
we all
before.
need to be able to do more.
And so it's and in many cases at a uh, quality level that's higher because
Mhm,
by reducing the cost of doing the work, you
mhm,
actually enable people to do more of the
mhm.
work
Yeah,
within the
absolutely.
time they have available. And so you can also increase the quality of the output and of the work through those processes.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I have the great privilege of having connections with several not-for-profits throughout the state even, and just, the people popping in my head right now that, "Oh, they could really use this. They could really use that." That's just really amazing, and, I it's exciting to hear because, we need to be able to do more with less, and
I'll
that's
give you
that's the reality.
I'll give you another gold nugget, and I would recommend that any organization like yours at least get a $20 a month account. I prefer Claude because I think it's less sycophantic. ChatGPT has a tendency to tell you what you want to hear. I think they're trying to
Okay.
tweak to fix that because they were originally consumer facing, not business facing. But Anthropic and Claude have already done that. But Google has as well. You can build projects inside of a paid account that's kind of hyper focused on that activity, and one of the best things you can do, take your overall resource guides or your company, like your company descriptors that you have, put them in a project and then say, ask me questions about our organization until you feel like you understand the tone, voice, and style of our organization. And once
Oh,
you're done with that iteration, say, now create me a brand guide for AI to carry our tone, voice, and style. And it will write it in what's called Markdown in a really long document that's probably 20 or 30 pages that you can then download and provide to any of these AI tools to get it to write in a way that sounds like your organization instead of sounding like out of the box AI.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting because that is one thing I know, when I written mini grants in the past, and I have been told the people that I send the grants to do not like they like the fact that I'll say 4 sentences and not 5 pages,
Mhm.
and so that's our style here is to keep it short and simple so that people could actually maybe read it, and, I could see and that's the problem I've heard with AI in the past, that they all sound the same, and so and that way, that's really interesting, so. I can see a lot of uses for this. This is really, really exciting to me, and um, I just can see a lot of ways that could help us. Which, as I said, all nonprofits need that right now, where it's a different world right this second. So we're just figuring out how to live in it.
It's also a great way to compare financial sheets. So if you let's just say you have bills for a certain domain that come in on a quarterly basis, you can upload all of that, all those bills to it. And again, you want to probably have a paid account because
Right,
it, first off, go into the settings of any account that you're in, and in the settings, it will have a privacy setting and it will say, can we use this model to improve other models? Basically, what they're asking is, can we use all your information like
right,
carte blanche? You want to turn
right.
that off, whether you're on a free
Okay,
model or a paid model, turn that off. And then you're much safer in a paid model. But you can upload all of these different documents and different bills and say, hey, look for discrepancies. Look for where we might have overlooked something or been overcharged for something. And it's amazing how this technology can parse through thousands and thousands of lines of data and see something that a human being might have overlooked or would have taken hours to dig through.
to dig through and find
Mhm.
that's interesting, and many of us have. If we do still have some federal money and some state money, and we do still have some, I'm not saying we don't have any, just not what we used to have. But the claim process to actually get the money from the federal government is never easy and very strict. And I maybe there will be ways we could use AI to do that. Here's the rules and regulations. Here's what they'll pay for, what they won't pay for. You, I had a conversation once where I had sent in an Excel spreadsheet, but it had rounded up pennies. I wasn't allowed to do that, so I had to go back and manually do all that. It's I could see A1 doing that for me. And so, I mean, because that took a minute to do that. So yeah, that I can see, and my mind is going now a lot of different ways that it could be useful, and none of this did I know about or have time to look into, and so, hopefully this podcast can help a lot of people think differently about it. So,
Well, and so if we were to look at now the different things we've talked about NotebookLM, we've talked about using some of these foundational models, and all of that. So here would be an opportunity on that claims process to put these things together. I'm assuming as part of making the claims, there's
mhm,
some form of claim review process.
yes,
So
hmm
you could take the rules and regulation of the public rules and regulation of that claim process. You could
hmm
put that in NotebookLM. You could have it make a training video for you so that your volunteer staff now has training on the exact rules and regulation, right? Now, with that training video, you can upskill potentially volunteer staff or some different staff to
hmm
do that work because they've now gone through the training video. You can then you can then ask it to generate a reviewer skill or procedure. And you could then feed that into a foundational model. And you could feed your reviewing procedure along with your submission that's been created
hmm
by someone who's been upskilled to do it, and then
hmm
you could have the reviewer check the output, check the formatting, check those different components and score it or identify places that need help and all of that.
hmm
And then
hmm
you could go over that, kind of reviewed piece in that training phase and talk with that person who's upscaling to do that work to be like, that's because you made this mistake, that mistake. So we just, in that example, are stringing together a few of these different tools to be able to expand who can do different kinds of work within the organization,
Mhm, mhm.
um, all through using this AI tooling as the mechanism by which we can downscale work and upskill people, while maintaining the confidence that we're submitting appropriate
Exactly.
things
Yes.
to claim different things.
Mhm.
And so this is examples of different ways that these things can all come together to have a really large impact on operations.
That would be great. Now my mind is just spinning. There's so many things I want to do now. Um, One of the things that several other I've been I've worked in my organization for a little over 40 years. One day I'm not going to be here anymore working. Not tomorrow, but one day. But when I started, I remember when we bought our first computer for the company. I mean, that's how it was. I remember, we didn't have computers at home when I was growing up for sure. So, so much, so many things are in my head and not written down anywhere. And I'm hearing that AI could help me get that written down in a video, in a process that I could talk to it and then it could make it okay, this is how it was done at that time. And, everything changes, but some things don't. And, here's the history of the organization and here's how things were done. I could see that being really helpful because I just had a not for profit leader the other day say, how do I retire? Everything's in my head. And I'm thinking, oh, here's how we're going to do this. And so it's so
That's
many
so
possibilities.
important, Marie. That is the number one barrier most organizations outside of technology are encountering in deploying artificial intelligence is that there is not a knowledge base of what their policies, procedures, and daily activities are. If you look at the software industry has been completely overtaken by AI, right? But everything that they do is very prescribed across the
Mhm,
entire industry. There's a way to do things that they follow, right? If you go into nonprofit work or office work, we don't have a lot of prescribed ways.
yeah,
John might do it a totally different way than Larry does it, who does it a totally different way than Tina does it. And you really cannot automate. These tools are only as good as the data you give them. So if you want them
mhm.
to do a job or half do a job in your organization, you do need to have that prescribed, and it can help you outline that. I think that would be you would be leaving the next person much better off if you start to organize that data now.
I can definitely see how that would be so helpful um, for us. And it used to be a lot of nonprofit executive directors specifically, they didn't stay for very long. But lately that has happened. People have found where their passions are and they're staying a long time and there's just so much history there that you just can't tell a person. I'm trying I have a person now that I'm trying to train. And I gave her like 2 months to learn everything I knew. And she's like, I don't think I can do that. It's like, that's a joke. I mean, she can have as long as she needs. But, that is really interesting to me to put those things down and as for the board, I give them this paper book that's this thick. I know they don't even look at it. And, if we had a video, they might look at that. And this is really exciting, actually. So,
So along these lines, there's a vertical product called Wispr Flow, and Jason's a big fan of it, but it really is pretty incredible. And what it does is it basically creates a key on your keyboard where whenever you're in your computer with your cursor on something, anywhere you can type something in,
mhm,
you can press the key and it'll start recording. And then you can just talk to it and it will just faithfully transcribe what you're saying straight into the cursor input. So what that means is if you're in the middle, if you want to write an email, you
mhm,
can just click on the reply, click into the box where you, at the point where you would start typing, instead of typing, you press the voice key basically, and
mhm,
then just talk to it. and it'll just describe and put it, and then you let go of the voice key and it'll just transcribe everything you just said right into that email. Or if you're doing it in a document, right into the document, or and so forth and so forth and so forth. And so this is a really good transcription tool that is AI powered, that is out there, that is really good for kind of as part of getting all of that information out of your
Yeah.
head.
Yeah, that
Probably
is really
formats
great.
it as well. I think that's one of the things. It formats it as well. So if you're in an
Oh,
email
okay.
and you talk through
Okay.
the whole email and then let go, it will put the name at the top with a comma and then the next paragraph and then the next paragraph without you saying comma, new line
Oh,
like you've had to
okay.
historically. Yeah, it figures out based on the context of your conversation what the format should be. It's
Hmm.
for a guy like me who's 52 years old and types about 40 words a minute. I think now that I have Wispr Flow, I'm at anywhere between 148 and 173 words a minute on average.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
great. And I fortunately do type fast, but I talk even faster. So
Well,
I could see how that would be great because 'cause I'm thinking I'd have to type all this stuff that I know. That's cool. Yeah.
before we close, and I want Oliver to have some closing thoughts on it, but there's two things that I want to remind everyone out there. You probably have a university like Purdue University nearby, or a community college like Ivy Tech you have nearby as well. They're always looking for internships. They're not always paid. They're always looking for volunteer opportunities for students. Okay, so you do need an internal AI policy once people start using these tools. You can ask AI to write it for you, and you can call up the Office of Engagement over at Purdue and say, hey, do you have someone who could review our 2-page nonprofit safety policy? And they will do it for you. And I've had them do it. And they will send you
Great.
back with, here's what you need to add to it in order to protect yourself. Now, if you start automating things with AI agents, you probably will need a third party to come in and make sure that you're doing that safely. But if you're just using AI tools, it's good to have a safety policy. And think
Mhm.
about that data collection that you're talking about and capturing all of your different. Why not get an intern who's studying data science to come for the
Mhm.
summer and help you do that in a way that's not only going to be a little less of a burden for you, but is going to be better set up for the technology to read going forward. And it's a win-win. They get to see how their skills are still very relevant, which they're hearing they aren't, and they are still very, very relevant, out in the real world.
Mhm.
Amazon's 10,000 person data team may not be hiring undergrads, but every business out there needs
Mhm.
computer science and data science people to come help them navigate this future of work.
That's very good to know. And I will second that. I mean, I get great help from
Yeah.
Purdue and Ivy Tech, um, and and they are smart kids
They
there,
are.
and so very lucky to have that opportunity. So this has been so exciting for me to hear, and my mind is really going quickly about all the ways this can be helpful. Things that I didn't know existed. Like I said, I'm at level 1. In fact, it takes me a minute to even say AI because I'm used to, like, A1 steak sauce. And my daughter's like, "Mom, it's AI." "Oh, okay, got it, I got it." So if you can make me understand this, you guys can make anybody understand it. It's great, and, I really appreciate you thinking about the nonprofit world, and I know that you both have a heart for that after meeting with you, I could definitely tell that, and I so appreciate that, and I'm anxious to see what we do going forward. So,
Definitely. Oliver, what closing thoughts do you have?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing about Homestead and all the great work y'all do and the challenges that the
mhm,
last several months and probably couple of years have brought on. I think we're always excited to this technology is developing very quickly,
mhm,
um, and so we're always happy to be able to share what we know with different folks and be able to help move the right things forward.
great.
Yes. Thank you for your vulnerability, because you know what? You are far from alone. There are so many people out there who are realizing that this is probably going to be something that they have to integrate, but they just don't know where to start. So, what a great
Exactly.
conversation. We'll be sure to put all your links in our show notes. And how can
Thank
people
you.
best support your organization right now?
Thank you.
Do you,
So, we just always need make sure people know that they can come to us. Most of our programs are free, so we do fundraising. We do events to help raise funds. Always happy to do that. But our goal here is just to keep families housed, and that is just the basic thing that people, food, shelter, clothing is what families need. And I have a special place in my heart for kids, and the thought that kids are having to move all the time just breaks my heart. And so we need to do better as our state, our country, and we can.
Amen. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.